In 2017, the World Economic Forum made the by now famous prediction that by 2020 Bitcoin would consume as much power than the whole world did in 2017. This obviously didn't come true, but the damage was already done, and so even today people are worried about Bitcoin's energy consumption, which is why I thought it would be a good use of time to look at the actual data. And in the end I will even prove to you that Bitcoin will never use more than 1% of all the energy consumed in the world. So I hope you will stick around for that, but for now let's jump into it and look at the data. A good starting point is the Cambridge Bitcoin Electricity Consumption Index. You can find it online to look at the methodology and check out the newest values, but as of September 2025, their best estimate is that Bitcoin uses about 200 terawatt hours of electricity each year. Let's put this into some context. They also provide us with an estimate of total world production and consumption of both electricity as well as energy in general. And here we see that Bitcoin's share of electricity consumption is well below 1%. And if we look at total energy, it is actually only 0.3%. Now we can debate whether this 0.3% is still bad for the environment, but that's a topic for a future video. So right now, let's focus on the claim that Bitcoin will never use more than 1% of total energy consumption. The claim rests on the simple fact that you can't spend more than you earn. Unless you have a central bank, of course, but this is also a topic for another video. But now seriously, think about it. Every miner has to actually buy a lot of expensive equipment, and they have to spend money to get electricity. They have to pay salaries and everything. So the amount of electricity that all the miners can consume is limited by how much they earn. And the income of all the miners in the network can actually be estimated quite easily. It is simply the total amount of bitcoins that they get as a reward for mining plus the transaction fees multiplied by the price at which they can sell those bitcoins in the open market. A couple more remarks. First, the transaction fees are actually quite low at the moment. So the average in 2025 so far was about 6 Bitcoin per day. This means we can more or less neglect this term. And we only need to estimate the mining rewards that the miners earn. And to do this, you need to know that in the beginning, the mining reward was hard-coded to be 50 Bitcoin per block. But Bitcoin has a mechanism that cuts the mining reward into half every 4 years. This event is called the Bitcoin halving. And so today, in 2025, you only get 3.125 Bitcoin for every block that you find. Now that we know how much Bitcoin a miner gets, if he finds a block, we need to know how long it takes for him to find one. And on average, it takes about 10 minutes to find a new block. This is also guaranteed by another mechanism in the Bitcoin protocol that's called the difficulty adjustment. And I will look at this in a separate video. But since we now know how much Bitcoin a miner gets, which is 3.125 Bitcoins per block, and we know that it takes about 10 minutes to find a new block, we can easily calculate the total mining reward for each time period. We simply take the time we are looking at divided by 10 minutes, so we know the number of blocks, and multiply the number of blocks by the reward per block. And with this, we've basically proven that the price provides an upper bound on total energy consumption. Because again, the miners can only spend as much or less as they earn on electricity. And the income is simply the total mining reward R multiplied by the price. And today the price is about 100,000. And if we look at the total history, we can see that the price is only increasing steadily nowadays compared to the wild years in the beginning, where it jumped from basically 0 to about 1,000 in a couple of years. And so let's look at a very bullish scenario by which Bitcoin will hit $1 million by 2032. Now, this would mean that the price would go up about 10x in 7 years, which is equal to about 40% increase in price each year. Now, if you think this is bearish, you're welcome to adjust the numbers, but I think this is quite optimistic. Now, to estimate the total number of Bitcoins mined in a year, we also need to consider the fact that there will have been two halvings, one in 2028 and one in 2032. And so the mining reward will have dropped to 0.78125 Bitcoin per block. And again, if it takes 10 minutes to find a block, you will find about 6 in an hour, and a day has 24 hours, and a year has 365 days. So the total number of Bitcoins that will be mined in 2032 will be only about 41,000, which shows you just how quickly Bitcoin is getting scarcer and scarcer. Now, if we assume that the miners will then sell those Bitcoin at an average price of 1 million, we can calculate that the total mining revenue will be about $41 billion. Of course, they also have to buy new hardware, they have to pay rent and salaries. And so one assumption that I've put in here is that about 20% of this will be used for other expenses, which means that they are left with a total, a maximum amount of $33 billion that could be spent on electricity. And if we have a budget of $33 billion, and we also assume that they spend about 5 cents per kilowatt hour, we end up at an estimate of 660 terawatt hours that will be used by the whole network in 2032. Now, 660 terawatt hours is about 3.3 times more than the 200 we have estimated today, which would also mean that its share would increase to about 0.99%. However, we would have to also consider that the total energy consumption would grow quite a bit in 7 years, and so it would be well below 1%. With that, I mean, you're free to change all of the assumptions here and play around to find your best estimate of what total energy consumption will be in the future. But I think I have shown that even if we are very bullish on Bitcoin and we think that it will go to 1 million by 2032, we can rest easy and be sure that the total energy consumption will not be a problem